Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream at the end of the day one of the Combine, and we're going to talk about everything that's been going on today. It could be a sort of a mini rant about the Combine, and I'm going to get into that in a second. I've also got some big thoughts on the Seahawks, so you'll want to stay tuned to that. If you want to send your super chats in, if you have questions, if you've got comments on anything that we are talking about today, then send those in. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. And stay with us throughout this off-season process, which I think is going to be unlike we've seen for a while. And I'm going to explain why in a few moments. I am wearing the UCF hat. Someone has already commented on it because of Malachi Lawrence, who was one of a few people who had a good day today. So let's talk about the Combine first of all. The Combine's got a problem. It's got a big, big old problem. And that is evidenced by the complete lack of buzz on social media. This used to be something that everybody was talking about. Like you couldn't shift for Combine content on Twitter, as it used to be known at the time. And it felt like the center of the universe for a few days. And it was becoming a behemoth, and the NFL could see that. And as with everything, they've tried to ruin it. The move to prime time was the start of the downfall of the Combine. They've already, in my opinion, ruined aspects of the NFL by having a 17th regular season game. I live in England, as you can probably tell by my accent. There are too many international games. I enjoy a trip to London, which is 3 hours away from where I live, to go and watch an international game in London. I have no problem with that. The fact that they've got 9 of these things. One of the things, as a British man, one of the things that I love about the NFL is it's American. And I want to go to America to watch it. And I like the fact that it is American. Just as I like the fact that our football over here is English. Like, I wouldn't want the Premier League to go and play games in America, and I'm not that bothered about the NFL playing games all over the world. And in my country, I'm happy to go and see a game. I will take it, but there's just too many of them, and if they're going to keep expanding this, it's not for me. So there's a lot of things that they're doing, and I, for one, think they have spoiled the Combine. And what have we had today? We've had even more of the bigger names not running. The Combine schedule is completely messed up now, because what they used to do is they used to get these players in and they'd make them do a whole bunch of meetings with the teams. They'd have them in for medical checks that would take hours. And then they would say, right, now you need to go out and run and jump and do drills and impress us with your athletic performance. And back in the day, players were prepared to just get on with it and do it. They're not prepared to do that anymore. A lot of them are already multimillionaires because of NIL. A lot of them are saying, I don't need to do this. I'll just go and do it at my pro day when I can perform at my very best. A lot of them have better representation from much more experienced agents who are savvy with the ways of the world in 2026. The landscape has completely changed, and the Combine needs to change with it. They need to be able to give the players a bit of space to do all of the stuff they need to do with the teams, whether that's the meetings and the medicals. They then need the time and the space to do a workout. You might have to do that in a completely different time of the calendar to when you're doing all the other stuff. I don't know, because asking these players to travel across the country now and do all of this in 4 days, it ain't working anymore. And a lot of them are saying, I'm not going to run in these conditions. I will do it at my pro day, which is probably down the road from where I live, in an environment that I'm very comfortable in, having had a good night's sleep and proper food the day before, and can feel like I'm in peak condition to go and do it. And the track's probably going to be quick and favorable to me. That's where they want to test. And unless you make some changes and do stuff to the Combine, year after year, we're going to see fewer and fewer of the players running and testing and doing all of the stuff. Here's a list of players who didn't run. I'm going to read it really quickly. Keldrick Folk, Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor, Zion Young, Caden Curry, Gabe Yackers, Josiah Josephs, Derek Moore, Kieran Crawford, Peter Woods, Caden McDonald, Dominique Orange, Darrell Jackson, Xavier Harris, Ray Sean Benny, CJ Allen, Kendall Daniels, Josiah Trotter, Harold Perkins, Bryce Bircher, Dante Lawson, Jimmy Rolder. I could probably go on a lot more. Some of those players are not healthy and they didn't do anything today. I accept that. But that's a long list of players for one day at the combine to not do the workouts. I've been doing this for 18 years. When this was at its peak, most of the players were running. It was just an exceptional thing to witness, to see all of these players competing and testing and doing the same drills. And then they go and do the positional drills. And then we get all the short shuttles and the three cones and the verticals and the broads. And players just aren't doing that anymore. I mean, let me just have a look now. I've got the screen open here. Let's go on all. How many people did a three cone today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people. And that's because the linebackers did them. Only 2 pass rushers did them. Danny Dennis Sutton did a 6.90. Really good from him. And George Gums from Florida did a 7.0 in the three cone. The linebackers have done it, and it's boosted the numbers. That's still a fraction of the people who were able to perform today actually doing a three cone. Like, you've got to give these incentives to players to come and actually do all of the testing. Otherwise, what's the point of the testing? Just have it like an owners meeting type thing where all the GMs can get together, invite the players, let them do the meetings, and say it's just going to be pro days moving forward. This just isn't working as a concept anymore. And I say there's a lack of buzz from the fans. And the broadcast today felt as flat as a pancake. It felt like the NFL Network couldn't wait to wrap the whole thing up at the end. And I as I was sat there, I turned to my wife who was watching something else, and I said, this just isn't the combine anymore. This just isn't the event that I grew to love and found so much value in. I'm afraid it has changed, and I don't think you can go back to it now. So I think the NFL needs to have a rethink here, or they just need to sort of reinvent this event as something where you don't do the testing. Maybe they'll just argue that whatever there's even if there's 25% of the people willing to run a 40, it's worth doing. Someone will watch it. You might as well have those eyes than have them watching something else. You might as well. But just the credibility of the combine is getting weaker. And I just wonder how long it is till we have a time when none of the top players test. And I have to have a sip of tea there because I'm in mid-flow. This has been an 8-minute rant already on a solo pod. Fair play to Arvell Reese, to Sonny Styles, and to David Bailey. 3 players who are going to be high picks who did all of the on-field drills and ran a 40. I don't think Reese did the jumps, but they did most of the stuff. And a lot of these players, even the ones like Peter Woods, who were expected to have a great workout, didn't do anything. So fair play to those 3 big names, but very disappointing in the number of players who didn't get involved today. Let's run through the positions, because I'll tell you what, it was, apart from the linebackers, it was such a disappointing day. I really just want to talk about the Seahawks because I've got a big thought on the Seahawks. I want to come to that in a bit. And don't forget, if you've got any questions, super chat away and I'll put them up on the screen. Defensive tackles, I yawned several times while the defensive tackles were running and doing their drills. Just a complete lack of sparkle. I have absolutely it's mind-blowing to me that Lee Hunter came out of the Senior Bowl and people, we're talking about big names in the draft media world here. We're saying Lee Hunter had a great Senior Bowl. Lee Hunter's the top defensive tackle in the draft. Daniel Jeremiah started today with a montage of Lee Hunter clips saying that he's 27th on his board and he's the highest ranked defensive tackle. Why? It doesn't make any sense. And then you look at Lee Hunter and, I'm just going to say this. I don't get, he's the shape of an orange with legs. He is a very round upper body. He's carrying some bad weight and he's got skinny legs. And then you look at the testing results were frankly, just awful. He jumped to 21.5 inch vertical and an 8'4" broad jump. How are you going to do anything in the trenches in the NFL with that lack of explosion? And you look at his legs and you're like, does he do a leg day? Are the legs just there to stand? There's no explosion in the lower body. And then you watch the Senior Bowl 1v1s. He's very upright. He lost as many as he won. There was the Bo Stevens thing where Bo Stevens just like slapped him down in that sort of 1v1 to end one of the days, which they were doing like the little 1v1s with the crowd around them at the end. I thought that just showed again that I don't understand where this is all coming from. Like Lee Hunter is not a terrible prospect, but this idea that to have him ranked ahead of Caleb Banks is just astonishing to me. And I did not find that impressive. Caleb Banks, 6'6", 327 pounds, 11-inch hands, 35-inch arms. Jumps a 32-inch vertical and a 9'6" broad. That's a top 15 pick. If he passes the medical checks and if you are comfortable with him, you've got to take him that high. He is absolutely, as a prospect, fantastic. He is fantastic. And he should go very, very early in the draft. Again, if the medicals are fine. I know he has had injuries, so you're going to have to check that up. And some people talk about it. I have no problem with it. I've not seen anything. I think he interviews well. I liked him barking at the Senior Bowl. I want that. I want someone who's going to give it a bit of this in the trenches. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. There was one disappointing thing, though. He did the wave drill, and then apparently, according to the NFL Network, he stops doing the drills after that because his shoes don't fit properly. I mean, come on. I mean, was that the agent saying, Caleb, you've done a great day today. Get yourself off, son. Go on and take an early shower. You don't need to do anything else. Don't get yourself hurt here. Job done, mate. And that's when the shoes thing comes out, because I'm not being funny. That's a crap excuse to not carry on, that your shoes don't fit properly. So I wasn't having any of that. But even still, a quality player. But even him, somebody that I like, ended up providing a bout of disappointment there. Was not happy about that. And then, in terms of the others, people going, Zane Durant. Zane Durant at Penn State is 290 pounds and he has sub 32-inch arms. Like, where's he playing for you? Like, it's very difficult. Grayson Holton, he's a blog favorite. I like him. Explosive tester. His explosive testing results, very impressive. There's half a chance there because of that. Another player with sub 32-inch arms, though. Like, it's difficult when you have that lack of length and that lack of size to get on the field in the NFL. So I just kind of came away from it. I thought the positional drills, I saw nothing. There was no sparkle. There was no kind of like, oh, that's interesting. Do you remember there was the year that Byron Murphy and Braden Fisk were in the same draft, and you watched them, you're like, wow, like these guys, this is what it should look like. This is the exciting stuff. This is the kind of, I'm going to watch the highlights of the combine later because these two perform so well. There was none of that today. So defensive tackles, I'd say the other thing, I have to say this because I've been complaining about the Lee Hunter thing. I'm a big Caden McDonald guy. I thought Caden McDonald did not exactly cover himself in glory today. He didn't run. I thought during the drills, he just looked a bit hesitant. It just didn't have that explosive step or that suddenness to him. He did just look like a big defensive tackle with too many layers on. Like, he got all the shirts and everything on. Like, he did not look like a svelte, like, okay, like, I'm going to come in here. I'm not just a great run stopper. I'm going to be a good athlete as well. You didn't get that sense on the field. I've got to review the tape again based on what he showed today. I just have to. And then the other thing I should have mentioned when I was talking about the combine, if you want players to test and you want players to get out in the positional drills, you've got to have a turf that doesn't have them sliding around like they're at the Winter Olympics. I thought I was watching the ice hockey game again between the States and Canada when I was watching today. They're all slipping and sliding everywhere. It's the same thing that happened last year. They were slipping all over the field last year as well. Like, what's going on? Did they relay the turf at the end of the season? And it's just, can't they just wait until the combine's done, if that's what it is? Because whatever they've got on this turf that's making them slide around, is it the shoes? Like, what is it that's making them slip around? Because that's 2 years in a row now where you're just waiting for somebody to get seriously hurt. And the receivers might be able to do it, because they're the lighter guys, 180 pounds, 190 pounds. You've got a 320-pound guy trying to change direction and pivot, and he slips. Anything could happen there. Muscle injury, break a leg, anything. So it worries me that they're slipping around again. That just can't happen. God, it's 15 minutes and I'm so thirsty from the rant. So defensive ends. This is another group that the draft media have been saying, it's a deep group. We could see so many players going in the top 2 rounds and everything like that. Well, that's great. The reason you're going to have so many of those players going in the top 2 rounds is because there's nobody else. Somebody has to go. There has to be 64 picks. You're not going to get to the end of the second round and 17 teams decided, well, we're just not going to bother. We've decided not to use our picks this year. Somebody is going to get selected with those selections. And it's a numbers game, not a quality game, in my opinion, for the defensive ends. I thought it was another group that just the word that springs to mind is meh. M-E-H, meh. It was just not exciting at all to watch these players perform. There was a whole bunch who didn't run, as I mentioned, but Keldrick Folk, watching it, he doesn't run to start off with. He looked stiff in his movements. He didn't look to me like somebody who you go, well, that's a top 20 pick there. He didn't stand out in that way. Zion Young, there is a man who is getting a good press. I've tried to sort of dampen down the enthusiasm, and even Drew Fabianic yesterday was talking about him. I just think we need to pump the brakes a little bit here because he did have a good Senior Bowl. I accept that. But because of the GPS tracking we get with Zebra Technologies, we can see what his top speed was. His top speed at the Senior Bowl was slower than LJ Collier. You know how that worked. So I'm thinking, if he runs today, could he run a 4.9? And he doesn't run. So is he a 4.8, a 4.9 runner? Do you want to take that in the first round at 260 pounds? I don't. I need more than that. And then you're watching the drills. My word. The pass rush through the bags drill, he was like he was running through quicksand. He couldn't turn around that final bag and close to the quarterback. And then on the figure 8, it was so labored. And people are saying this is a first round guy. And that's before you even consider the arrest for the DWI and the speeding. Weeks before the draft process began, weeks before he went to the Senior Bowl and now at the Combine. That's just moronic to get caught doing that. It's moronic anyway. Regardless of the draft, you shouldn't be drinking and driving anyway. But to do it this close to draft season, what's that all about? And people keep going, oh, yeah, he's a fiery character and had a good Senior Bowl. I'm like, yeah, and he's a muppet for getting caught drink driving at all, let alone the circumstances. The fact that you've got the draft coming into it as well is another problem. And he can't run and he can't turn. So, yeah, it's great if you just think he's going to run through someone's chest every time. But he's not going to be able to do that in the NFL consistently like he did in the SEC. It ain't happening. So I'm not having that. You've got David Bailey, bless him. He did everything. I respect that. Fair play to him. That will get a big tick in the box for a lot of teams that he went out there and tested. But I've said this a few times. Look at the frame. When you look at David Bailey down there on that field, it was noticeable when he was stood next to Romello Height, his Texas Tech teammate, and he's jacked, he's got muscles for days. And David Bailey stood there, and he hasn't. And he looks kind of normal, stood next to Romello Height, who looks like an athlete. And I'm just thinking, how many top pass rushers look like David Bailey? There aren't many. And his testing today was fine. Was it a 4.51, 35-inch vertical, a 1.6? I should get the split. I want to get the split accurate because it is important. His split was a 1.62. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with a 1.62. But we always say that an elite split is in the 1.5s. And he's not in the 1.5s. So if you were going to take him 25th overall, 1.62, that's fair enough. No, not a 1.62 second overall like some people are saying. So I don't see the hype there. Again, I think it's a numbers game rather than a quality game. It's this draft class. It's settling for what's there. I would take Arvell Reese 2 ahead of him. I would take Caleb Downs 2 ahead of him. I'd probably take Jeremiah Love 2 ahead of him. I don't see elite future pass rusher. People are saying, is the UCF hat for Malachi Lawrence? I will get onto Malachi Lawrence now. Of the positives, he was possibly it. Like, he was the big positive. I think you could possibly say that Mason Riger at Wisconsin's worth a look. I've not studied him, and I thought he looked controlled. I thought he looked smooth, his movements. He has a decent frame. I thought he looked interesting. I want to go and watch him. Like, can I just say something, though? This is going to drive Mike Barra, who is in the chat. You need to, I've pleaded with you already to stop talking about what you're talking about with the cap and you don't understand the cap and the cash space. You've been doing it on the blog in the comments, and you're doing it here now. If you stop, it's not about whether an owner with 20 billion in the bank has got the cash. Teams do not have endless funds, and people who run Vulcan do not have access to $200 billion. Can you please stop talking about the Seahawks could just go and sign everybody in the bloody chat, because you keep doing it on Seahawks Draft Blog and you're doing it here now, and it's starting to boil my piss. They can't just sign everybody, okay? They can't. The cash is a real thing. People talk. Brady Henderson was talking about it today. The great thing they did with Dan Vines. They can't just go and sign everybody. They can't just do everything that you want them to do. They can't do it. So there we go. I had to get that off my chest, because I'm just seeing all the comments. People are trying to talk about the combine, and all you're talking about is sign everybody, which you've been doing on the blog as well. Pack it in. They can't do it. Otherwise, everybody would, because everybody's got a billionaire owner. Pretty much, like the Bengals and like 2 or 3 others. Everybody would be able to do it. And they just keep everybody all of the time. It doesn't happen for a reason. Anyway, back to the cop. Malachi Lawrence. I have been putting on Seahawks Draft Blog a feature on of group of players every time and my scouting notes on those players. And I'll read you what Malachi Lawrence was part of the first one that I put out. This would have been about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. And this is what I wrote. A truly dynamic edge rusher with the skills to get to the quarterback, but there are question marks about his every down viability due to his run defense, which is poor. Even so, when he attacks the edge, he shows a level of dynamism most others don't in this class. Plus, he has a good repertoire of moves. He is a skilled and dangerous pass rusher. He's 6'4", 250 pounds with 33.5-inch arms. His consistent production with 20 sacks in 3 seasons plus 93 pressures. His win rate is 19.2% for 2025, and it was 22.7% last season. Lawrence knows how to use his length, extending his arms to keep blockers off his frame. He's very capable of attacking from a wide 9 angle to bend the arc. He also shows signs of an inside counter. He's slippery to get around substandard college left tackles. When the run game flows wide, he can work down the line and positions himself well. However, run defense is not a plus point generally if he's asked to seal the edge or anchor. When he can run to the ball carrier, he's a forceful tackler. He's shown evidence of exploding off the snap and hammering linemen. He has dumped blockers on their back. Lawrence attacks taller blockers by getting low and driving his arms upwards to gain leverage. His straight arm shows he can drive blockers into the pocket. He can chop away at the arms of blockers to avoid contact and can also rip through. As noted, he has an assortment of moves to attack blockers, and his bend is better than most edge rushers in this class. He plays with a high motor, and he lined up everywhere, including inside. He took 30 snaps inside in 2025. There is a player here. He is intriguing. The question is whether his run defense can improve, or does he have to be a situational rusher? There's a chance with good testing, he works into the top 50. I'm surprised he ended up at the Shrine Bowl rather than the Senior Bowl. Even if he does just end up rushing situationally, he is intriguing. That's what I wrote about Malachi Lawrence well before this combine. He has today, to run through what he's done today, he's 253 pounds, not 250. He ran a 4.52. He ran a 1.59 10-yard split. So he's got into the 1.5s, which is, anything in the 1.5s is great. He jumped a 40-inch vertical and a 10-10 broad. That is why the old UCF cap is on today. because Malachi Lawrence was one of the stars of the day. Now, I put in that review that he could go in the top 50 with good testing. I'm telling you, the fact that everything else looks so crap in this draft, I wouldn't be surprised if that's almost too low, because I think teams are going to look at this guy and go, he's got the sack production, he's got the length, he's got the speed, he's got the explosive traits. Compare that to all of the players who were playing his position in this draft who've got short arms, or they don't have the speed, or the body type's just not great. How can you justify taking, say, R. Mason Thomas or Cassius Howell ahead of this guy? Because it's not as if Cassius Howell's going to be any better of a run defender, is he, with his 30-inch arms? So for me, Malachi Lawrence, if you were thinking, oh, okay, I will happily take, say, Cassius Howell 25th overall, I would put to those people, why wouldn't you take Malachi Lawrence instead? And this is the thing. All of the national mock drafts look the same at the minute. They all look the same. And it's that kind of draft class where it's so all over the place because it's not a good draft that you are probably going to find that when you actually get to draft day, you're probably going to see from about picks 18 onwards, a load of crazy stuff happening. Stuff that you didn't expect. Like a whole bunch of things like, oh, I didn't see him going there, and this player's fallen. Like, it wouldn't be a shock if Ruben Bain and Akeem Messidor lasted a bit longer than people think, because they haven't done any testing. They didn't do any positional drills. Ruben Bain's got 31-inch arms, or even below that, on a 263-pound frame. We've had all of the talk about him having a kick inside, and now he's got 30-inch arms and he's 263. He ain't kicking inside with that size. So what is he? And then Akeem Messidor, he's got 31-inch arms, and he's 25 this year. They played very well for Miami, but is that enough? You've got to project to the NFL, not project what you did in the ACC and then in the playoffs. So I just think Malachi Lawrence, to me, I look at Lawrence and I just think that looks like an NFL player. That's the kind of person that I think can have a lot of success. And I'm just keep getting distracted by the comments. I think that's the kind of player that can do well. And that's the kind of player that you draft early on the potential. And I'm afraid some of these other players, they just can't. They if you have 31-inch arms and you are 240 pounds or 248 and you've got the 30-inch arms, then it's just not going to work. And the players like the R. Mason Thomases and the Cassius Howells and the Baines and the Messidors, for me, needed to come here and say, we're great testers, so it doesn't matter. And they haven't done that. So where do we go from here? I'd take Malachi Lawrence ahead of a lot of these defensive ends that people are saying, because at least there's the chance that you've got the raw physical tools in order to project to the next level. And that's why I think he might go earlier than people think. I mean, I saw Seahawks fans saying, hey, it'd be a great pick at 64. I don't think he's going to last to 64. I think that's wishful thinking. Not with the way that he performed. And he's got the production as well. Very productive at UCF. So I think there's a chance that he's going to be one of the big risers. And then onto the linebackers. I was just about to say, what a miserable day at the combine. And then the linebackers turned up a lot better. Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles, they lifted the gloom. Very good runs. Reese with a 4.47. They initially said that Reese's 10-yard split was a 1.53, but then the official one was 1.58. And Sonny Styles, he ran a 4.46, and they initially gave him a 1.51 10-yard split, but it got moved down to a 1.56 officially. But that is, for Reese, who is 241, 241 pounds, Styles 244 pounds. Styles also jumped to 43.5-inch vertical and an 11.2 broad. These are, top numbers here. And I think there's a very good chance that Reese is going to be the second overall pick. If he isn't the second overall pick, you would imagine there's a chance he's going to go third or fourth overall. The talent is too much there. he went out onto the field and did all of the drills. He looks so natural and loose with his movements. His change of direction is very, very good. He just looked like that's what good looks like. That's what first round looks like. It looks like Arvell Reese running around on that field in Indianapolis today. And then with Sonny Styles, he's a converted safety. I still think that to an extent he plays like a converted safety. I've not seen on the tape some of the stuff that other people keep referring to him as Fred Warner-esque. And I'm like, is that just because he can run? Fred Warner, when you watch Fred Warner in person, the man is phenomenal. Like, he's like the T-1000 chasing after John Connor. Like, he's unbelievable the way that he stalks people and just closes on them and then hits them, and that's that. Like, Sonny Styles doesn't do that on tape. Like, they have different playing styles. Doesn't mean he can't become that, but Fred Warner's a very rare player. And Styles, just because he can run and jump, I mean, we have seen, not to this extent. I mean, he's the first player, isn't he, over 6'4", who can jump as high as he is. And the game has changed somewhat, and these bigger, faster guys are having a lot of success. I have to say, I still think that he might be better off potentially playing the role that Nick Emenwari plays for the Seahawks, and maybe kind of leaning on some of that safety experience and playing there. Like, that might be the way that he has the best impact here, rather than playing middle linebacker. I don't think he's a Fred Warner. I think he's something else. So that's how I view him. But, there are teams out there, like, people have been like, how high could he go now? I think the floor possibly is Dallas. They need a middle linebacker. They're picking at 12. I think he's tested well enough, and because some of the others have not tested well enough, I would say 12 is probably the floor for him. We'll see how high he goes, but he's going to be a high pick based on that testing. That's what he needed to do. He seems like a good guy. NFL bloodlines. Dad played in the NFL. So, those two are going to go very early. A good day for Ohio State defenders. Other people who played very well. When we spoke to Drew Fabianich, if you haven't checked that interview out, please do. I spoke to him yesterday for half an hour-ish on a number of different topics. He's the executive director at the Senior Bowl. And he made this point. He said, if you look at Kyle Lewis, the Pittsburgh linebacker, he doesn't look 220 pounds. And when you looked at him today, he's thick, he's muscular, he's incredibly explosive. He had a 40-inch vertical, a 10.9 broad. He runs a 4.53. That is a quality day for him. I don't care that he's 220 pounds, because I just think he's a really good player. He's an amazing character player, first in, last out type. Has got that look in his eye. I think he's going to make it in the NFL. I just got a feeling that he's going to make it. Now, how high do you take him? I'm not sure, but I think for me, he's one of the better players in the draft at any position. I wouldn't necessarily be punching the table or banging the table for the Seahawks to take him at like 32 or anything, because I just don't think they need to do that. But I do think he's a lot better than a lot of these other players that are getting talked up in that range. So who knows? And the testing today was fantastic. Like, it wasn't average testing and like, oh, well, the tape's better than the testing. It's like, well, no, the tape's really good. The testing's really good. He's really good. So, I thought he was fantastic. There were lots of other linebackers who ran very well, or the explosive testing was very good. Caleb Elam's Orr from TCU was brilliant. Jake Golday was brilliant, I thought, today in the drills and the positional drills. There's a number of others. You will have noticed I was talking about the importance of explosive testing, and I've just noticed, by the way, that Lance Sealy, who I have massive respect for, has compared Malachi Lawrence to Josh Sweat in his draft review. I mean, that's a pretty good, if you're looking for, if you're wanting a Josh Sweat, why wouldn't that go earlier than some of these other players is the kind of point I would make there. It's a really cool comparison for Malachi Lawrence, and I can see that. So the point I was making is Todd McShay said that he had been speaking to people in the league, and what the league looks for at linebackers is explosive testing. And they look for the vertical, they look for the broad and the bench. that's what we do with the trench explosion formula. So I am going to do the TEF results for the linebackers, and I might do some over the coming weeks, do a bit of cross examination with the other classes and sort of see how this one stacks up. But Sonny Styles with a 43.5-inch vertical, Caleb Elam's all with a 40, Carson Sherrar with a 40, Kyle Lewis with a 39.5, Jake Golday with a 39, Justin Jefferson with a 38.5, Jacob Rodriguez with a 38.5, Anthony Hill with a 37, Jimmy Rolder with a 36. Some of them didn't do the jumps. That is explosive testing. You have got a whole bunch of explosive linebackers. And if that is what the league is looking for, then you have got it in this class. So as disappointing as the defensive linemen were, the linebackers, really good. And when they got onto the field, they looked very natural in their movements. There was not a lot of stiffness there. You saw it's like all the stiffness went with the defensive lineman. Maybe they got the oil out and they gave it to the linebackers to get into those joints, and the defensive linemen didn't get the same benefit because they looked stiff and the linebackers looked electric. So maybe if it's going to be a year where the linebackers end up being the better position here, we'll see how the cornerbacks and the receivers get on. But I thought that was an impressive outing, and they saved the day because otherwise it was a crap day for the defensive linemen. So I thought that was great. I have got a big point to make on the Seahawks, which I am going to come to after I've done the super chats. Mike says, chances the Hawks re-sign Shaheed, Kobe, and Job. I almost said Kobe and Joby then because obviously they're quite similar. I think I will defer to Brady Henderson, the exceptional reporter of the Seahawks for ESPN, and say that he has told Dan Vines, and you should go and watch the whole thing, it's worth a watch, that Rashid Shaheed is, it's in the balance, and maybe he will look for a short-term deal to sort of re-enter free agency in a year or two. That's the thought process, that he could get he's not had a 500-yard season in a while. I think he's only had one in his career. So he will probably want to have, if he can get 1,000 yards under his belt next season and then re-enter free agency, or even have like a couple of 1,000-yard seasons maybe, or get up towards that mark, he might end up cashing in a lot more than he would now. But it depends what people are prepared to offer. So that one's in the balance. Brady says that Josh Jobe, it's looking good there. So I think he's going to come back. I don't know about Kobe Bryant. It just sounds like people in the league see him as someone who's got lots of production with interceptions over 2 years, is consistent, is a good, solid football player. There's not been any issues off the field. He's from the Super Bowl champions. It just seems to me like teams are going to throw. He's the kind of player who gets more money than you expect. So my thinking is that he'll probably end up moving on, and that they will promote Tyre Carter to that role, and then maybe add another one at some point, whether that's in free agency or the draft or undrafted or something like that. They've done a decent job finding the safeties, so I'm not too concerned there. But that's my thought. So Job, yes. Bryant, probably no. Shaheed could go either way. Big thank you to Andreas for his super chat. Much appreciated there. Daniel says, thanks for the coverage as always, Rob. Which edge guys do you think will be decent value at 32 for the Hawks, if any? I don't think there's that. Malachi Lawrence might be the best bet. Gabe Yakas didn't do anything today, which is disappointing. His arms have grown beyond 33 inches now, and his hands are now 10 inches. So that's, they were like 8.5 inches at the Senior Bowl. I don't know what happened there. Now they're 10 inches. That alleviates some of the concerns there about the length and the hands. But given he ran as well as he did at the Senior Bowl, it would have been good to see him do some stuff today. He didn't. We'll see if that's an injury thing or what. Hopefully does a pro day workout. I just don't think. I'm going to come on to the Seahawks and what they're going to do at 32 in a bit. I didn't see anybody. I think Malachi Lawrence is probably the best bet of the lot, and he can't defend the run that well. So that'll need major work. And how does that impact his ability to get on the field quickly for this team? That's a big question mark. Make California Great Again says, haven't seen anybody mention Damani Jackson out of Alabama. Do you have any thoughts on him, Rob? Seems like a late round option with athleticism. I have not studied him. My apologies. I wish I could give you more for your super chat, but I have not had a chance to sit down and study Damani Jackson. I have not studied him, but I will look into it. The cornerback for Alabama. I will check him out and make sure that I've covered him. And Sam says, John Middlecoff basically said today that the combine has become inauthentic and likely will become a shell of itself. Players post NIL personality, overly trained, prepped, and likely still injured. I agree with John. I think it's a real shame because it used to be such an amazing thing. There was nothing more exciting than having like reams of data to go through, and you could look at all of the different results, and like we could pore over the TEF scores and stuff like that. It was brilliant, and it hasn't been that way for a long time because so many players don't test now, and it's going to get worse and worse every year unless they do something. I think the league needs to have a serious think. Like, do we want to just go along and it just become a shell of itself? Or do we want to do something about it and try and get it going again? I think if you're not bothered about doing that, why have you moved it to prime time and kept it at prime time? It was hardly like the tickets did not seem to have been massively sold out today. I mean, maybe they were and they just opened a small section of the crowd. I've never been there. There just doesn't seem to be much buzz around the combine. So all of the changes to move it to prime time, I just don't understand. Okay, like Alex says here, Rob, do you only talk about arm and hand length? I think you're genuinely great and analyze players very well, but geez, laugh out loud. Alex, that's the combine. Like it's the measurement aspect of it is a big part of what the combine is. And we're talking about the combine here. Like I have got thousands and thousands and thousands of words of notes on the players, and I am drip feeding those out in segments. If you want full breakdowns on the tape, as I did with Malachi Lawrence a few moments ago, this is the combine. It's about how fast you run, how long your arms are, how big your hands are. That's really it. And how you do in the positional drills. And, I don't think anybody really wants to hear me break down how every single player did the wave today. I just don't think that's much benefit. This one from Lars Purdy. Thoughts on Malik Muhammad and CJ Allen? CJ Allen, like downhill thumper of a linebacker. You don't really want him moving backwards. He is very much a forward moving linebacker. That is going to be a slight issue in coverage sometimes, but he's going to give you everything when, he's going to attack downfield. He's going to fly to the running backs. He can hit with a purpose. There is a tone setting element to his style of play. I think he's a good, not great player. I don't know if he's ever going to be sort of considered one of the top players in his position in the NFL. I think he's a solid player, but how early do you want to take a solid linebacker in a draft? Maybe in this draft a bit earlier than others. The problem that CJ Allen's got is he didn't do anything today, and a whole bunch of linebackers showed they were explosive and fantastic. And it's hard, it's like Cal Lewis is doing what he does today, having been to the Senior Bowl and worked his arse off there. It's hard for me to go, give me CJ Allen instead. I'll take my chance on Cal Lewis over him if he's not going to do anything. So that's my thought on that. Malik Muhammad, I think, is a very solid player. I actually preferred him last year more than this year. And I didn't think he had the most amazing Senior Bowl, but there's something there. I think he's part of a big group of cornerbacks who you're talking like round 3, round 4. You're going to have a chance to get somebody there who, as Drew Fabianich said yesterday, is going to be a cornerback 2, not a cornerback 1, but a cornerback 2, which is what the Seahawks need. They're going to have got Devin Witherspoon. They're going to pay Devin Witherspoon. They can bring back Josh Jobe and then sort of draft somebody who can be the Reek Woolen replacement who they can work on. That just makes perfect sense to me. I think that if they end up with sort of picks in day 2 or pick in day 2, I think that's one of the things they'll consider is taking a cornerback there. And Mohammed may be an option. We'll see how he gets on tomorrow when the cornerbacks test. This from Jan. I want to say thank you again for all of your coverage, Rob. You are a big part of why many fans cherish the Super Bowl so much, making this season extra special. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Jan or Jan. I think it's Jan. Yep, Jan. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you all like putting up with me rambling on here about the combine and having little rants and complaining about stuff. Like, I am English at the end of the day. We do have to complain 7 times a week. So I'm going to go on to, if there is any other super chats, send them in, but I'm going to go on to my thought on the Seahawks. And I know we're only 1 day into the combine and things can change. I accept that. I might have a very different opinion tomorrow when I've watched the cornerbacks, and I reserve the right to change that opinion. Watching that today, I've felt as convinced as ever that the Seahawks are going to trade number 32. I think they're going to try very hard to do that. I'm getting serious 2021 vibes about this draft. I think they're going to 2021 this class, to be honest. 2021, they had 3 picks. And they didn't try and trade down to get more. They just said, COVID draft, don't see the options, don't see the worth in this class. We're going to punt on it. They traded for Jamal Adams. Obviously, that was a disaster. They should not have traded for him. And we made that point at the time. But I think they're going to try and move the pick. I just don't see how you get to 32. And it's very hard for me right now. If I was to pull up a mock draft simulator and say, right, let's do a little mock. Who's there at 32? I don't know who I would take in that spot. Like, it's very hard to find the value there. Now, if someone like Caleb Banks fell, like a lot of these mock drafts have got him doing, like I don't understand, then yeah, fine. Run to the podium and take him. Fine. And feel very good about it. There are maybe 1 or 2 others that you think, oh, well, maybe if they fall. But then there's a whole bunch of players that they're just not worth the pick. And you can't just force it. And like, people go, well, you've got to take somebody. Well, yeah, if you can't trade it, you're going to have to take somebody. But I just don't see the value in this class. It's not a good class. I think they're going to punt on it. Now, Tom Pelissero said today that we could see a Max Crosby trade in the next 7 to 10 days. I think the Seahawks are going to be well in on that. That doesn't mean they're going to win the bid, because if the Raiders are getting apparently Mike Florio said the Raiders want 2 first-round picks and a player. And which player can the Seahawks trade? Like, I think the only one they could possibly trade is Chenna Nwosu. But, you know, Chenna's he's not at the start of his career. You know, he's I mean, how old is Chenna now? And also, it'd be pretty, I don't know if they want to do that. Do they want to send Chenna to Vegas? He's 30 this year, so he's not a younger player. They would need a pass rusher, and they would be getting one back. But is that going to be enough if the Bears offer 2 firsts and DJ Moore? Maybe the Bears wouldn't offer that. Like, there's the distinct possibility the Bears go, we don't want to go that far. That's too much. And that's the thing, is like, the Raiders want 2 firsts and a player. A year ago, the Seahawks wanted a first for DK Metcalf, and they accepted the 52nd pick. So you can have your ambitions. This is what we want. If the teams aren't willing to offer it, you get what you get. And it seems to me like the Raiders and Max Crosby, despite what John Spytek was saying this week, are heading for a divorce. So it's whether the Seahawks can win that bid. And as I also said this week, you cannot replace DeMarcus Lawrence with a rookie. And Brady Henderson has said on more than one occasion now, there is still a chance that DeMarcus Lawrence is going to retire, that he's considering it. And Brady has not just made that up. He's spoken to people with the team and within the Lawrence camp. So there's a chance DeMarcus Lawrence is not going to be back next year. You cannot replace that alpha, experienced, physical tone setter leader that is DeMarcus Lawrence with a rookie. So if you lose him and you want to compete to get back to the Super Bowl next year, Max Crosby is the perfect player, because he is also an alpha. He's also very physical. He's a leader. He's the top player for run stop win rate per ESPN last season in 2025. So he is the kind of player that you bring in to replace DeMarcus Lawrence. Can they do it? I think they're going to try. I think that's what they're going to try and do over the next 10 days. When Jody Allen, according to John, has told John, go for it, business as usual, I think that is indicative of go and make an interesting trade if you want to. And I think they're going to punt on this draft, and I think they're going to try and do that. And I think we need to keep our eyes peeled for that. But another team might outbid Seattle. The Bears, the Patriots. There's probably one or two others I'm not thinking of. Detroit. They're the kind of teams that might be in on this. So we'll see. We'll see. If it's not him, do they pivot to other players? Possibly so. Now, it's not easy to think of who you would trade for 32. Would they be prepared to trade for Trent McDuffie at Kansas City? I don't know. But if they lose Woolen and they sign Job, but they still want someone who maybe is a bit better, do they go and do that? The problem with that is you then have to pay McDuffie. So you'd be bringing in another problem when you've already got problems with the fact that as we've talked about a bit, when I had my little sort of go at Mike, it's nothing personal, Mike. It's just I've kind of explained this to you already. Like they have paid Charles Cross a huge amount of money and they've had to put that in escrow for guarantees. They're going to have to put an even bigger amount in escrow for JSN and for Devon Witherspoon. You can't just keep putting money into escrow. Like it's eventually the money runs out. And if you trade for Trent McDuffie, he's going to need money put in escrow if you sign him to a new contract because he's going to want guaranteed money up front. So that's going to be really, really troublesome if they trade for him, is that you're then going to have to pay him. So it makes sense to an extent. You bring him back to Washington. He played for the Huskies. Then you'd have a good cornerback. And, Trent McDuffie is better than a lot of what you'd be able to get at 32. I just don't know whether they're going to do that and then feel like they've got to pay him. So that's a problem with it if they miss out on Crosby. If Rashid Shaheed departs, would they go for someone like Jalen Waddle, who's already under contract? The Dolphins seem to be on a fire sale. Is it a fire sale or just a rebuild? And they might be open-minded about trading him for a first-round pick, maybe. Yeah. Is there anybody else that you could think of that you could get in with that use of the first-round pick? It's hard. It's quite hard. But I think you have to try if you look at this draft class and think, I don't know who I'm going to take at 32. And then if Ken Walker is leaving, and Brady said today that it's probably less than 50-50 that he stays, that it might be more likely right now that he goes because of the price and because he's needed to be in a timeshare to stay healthy and because running back position typically has been one that you can find answers to in the league. I just think they've looked at Jadarian Price and they've looked at Mike Washington and they've thought, we've got a couple of guys we like there. And they might be willing to take both of those players. I mean, Price, Washington Jr., Malachi Lawrence might be three players the Seahawks are prepared to take a lot earlier than people think. Just saying that. Because they've got the tools, they've got the speed, they've got the fit. And Lawrence's run defense, is that a fit? Maybe, maybe not. He'd probably be more of a Boya Mafe replacement than a DeMarcus Lawrence replacement, though. He'd still have to do that if he retires. That's a problem. But they're the kind of players that maybe they'd be higher on than others. And, if you can get a running back in round 2, they might just say, we're going to do that. So if you trade your first for, let's say it is Max Crosby, and that's your first, and you trade your 2027 first rounder as well. So that's Max Crosby for your first and next year's first. Second pick, let's say Price isn't available. Let's say it's Mike Washington Jr. Third round pick, a cornerback. You don't re-sign Kobe Bryant, but Tyler Carter gets that job. You sign Josh Jobe. You go and try and work out a way to get another defensive lineman in because you've lost 2 and you've only got one back with Crosby. If you do that, and maybe you sign Rashid Shaheed, and if you do all of that, you're kind of aware you are from your Super Bowl winning team. Personnel's changed a bit, but you're kind of still there. That feels like a plan. That feels like, as I'm saying this to you now, doesn't that make, you tell me in the comments, doesn't that make sense? Like Crosby with your first pick, and obviously next year's as well. a running back in round 2, let's say Mike Washington Jr., a cornerback in round 3, and then see what you can do with players who are cap casualties, so you can protect your comp picks for the fact that Walker might go and Maffei might go and Bryant might go, so you can get some comp picks for 2027 to make up for the fact that you're spending your 2027 first rounder on Max Crosby. Maybe you can get a third rounder out of all of that. Not beyond the realms of possibility. If not, maybe it's 3 fourth rounders. I just think it seems like that sounds as a reasonable a plan as I've either pitched or heard for what might happen over the next few weeks. Won't make the best for a draft blog or, quite frankly, if they trade away their first this year and next. But I don't care. I want the Seahawks to win. And I think this would be exciting. This would be exciting. So that's what I'm going to, if I was doing a little projection now, that's what I would write about. I would say Max Crosby, Mike Washington Jr., quarterback, punt on the draft apart from that. And then, you're going to lose some players. You're going to get some comp picks for next year. That's what I'd go for. That's what I think is a reasonable suggestion for this team. So there we go. Let me know in the comments section your thoughts on that and everything else. And listen, I don't mean to get ranty and angry and stuff like that, but when you've sat there for hours watching the combine and you kind of lose something you love a little bit, it does trigger emotions. And with respect to Mike, I just can't. We have talked about this, Mike, about the cash thing. So I just don't want it to be a constant discussion, as it was when you kept saying that the Seahawks should trade everything for a quarterback, and they didn't need to do that. They just signed Sam Darnold and won a Super Bowl. So that's it for today. I will do another one of these tomorrow after the combine has concluded with the defensive backs. So please do join me for that, and we'll go through everything. We will see what happens with the cornerbacks and the safeties tomorrow, and we'll do a review. There is an article on SeahawksDraftBlog.com already, which you can go and have a look at right now and read through the thoughts that I have on day one. Please do subscribe. Please like the video. Leave a comment as well if you can, and support the channel and support the blog as much as you can, please. Quick note, I did a bit with Puck Sports today, so go and check out Puck Sports channel. There's a video on there where we talk very briefly about the combine, but then talk about some general Seahawks topics. And the only other thing I want to say is I don't know if people are aware of this, but the reason the Seahawks have the 32nd overall pick is because they're the Super Bowl champions. They are the Super Bowl champions, the champions of the world. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow for the day 2 stream. Until then, bye for now.